This conference will now be recorded.
Yes. Anyone, any questions? I'll just start with that. Any questions I can address before we can move forward? Anyone? Any questions I can take before we move forward out here? Can you come again, please? Storage account access control. When you say access control at a storage account level, where did you find that? Where did you find that? Hmm. Okay, what is the difference you don't understand? Let's see that. Between storage account access level and the container access level. Let's see that. Let's look at that. Let's say this is storage RG. And let's check this out. Let's say there's some storage account called demo storage account. Let's see. ECS2, and I'll just go ahead and say local storage, advanced networking. I'll just go with the defaults here. Let's say review and create this out. Okay, valid information. What is that? Let's see. Should be good enough. Just think that the storage account name is taken. So let's create a storage account out here, and let's look at that. Now, very importantly, before I answer that question, you have a storage account and you have a container inside that particular storage account, right? These are the two things that you have right now. So storage account and container inside this particular storage account out here as such. What would you do to give the access to your storage account? That's a question. What would you do? Let's say you have a developer and this developer would like to have an access to your storage account container. How would you give the access? How would you give the access? Anyone? How would you give the
SaaS
access?
include access.
I'm sorry. Come again, please.
SaaS and access.
Through that.
SAS, SAS, and keys. But do I have access keys here? Do I have a concept called access keys at the container level?
No, sir. In the
Not really.
container level.
Yes, SS. Or if I don't want to give a key, what I can do? If I don't want to give a key, what can you do? Anyone?
You can access all the that.
No, if I don't want to give a key, I only want to give you access to this particular container. What will you do,
Anonymous
or what
access.
should you do? Anonymous
Anonymous
access? No, I don't want to put an anonymous access. I
public
don't want to do the anonymous access out there.
public access.
Yes, no, I don't want to put the anonymous access. I just want my container to in private access only. But I still want you to, let's say, go ahead and access this particular container over a storage explorer. Then
Can
what
roll
I
back
can do?
RBAC.
RBAC, exactly.
Through
RBAC
IS.
or IAM, Identity and Access Management. Now the question is that, what is the difference between the access at this level and access at this level? Is that your question? So again, let's talk about storage account. If I want you to have access to the entire storage account, what are all the options that I have? That is a question, sir. What are all the options that I have if you want access to the entire storage account? Anyone?
So you can give full access or read access. Read only.
Right, but what are the options that I
Fine.
do have here? What are all the
Which
options that
means
I
how
do
many?
have if you want to authorize that particular storage account? If you want to, let's say, gain access to that particular storage account?
Owner is one.
No, that's fine. That is RBAC that you're talking about. RBAC is one of the techniques to go ahead
Okay.
and give someone access to this particular storage account. What are all the other authentication methods that you can use here?
Azure
Yes,
authentications.
yes,
Can we
yes,
do Azure AD?
or what?
Azure AD authentication.
Yes,
Access
yes.
keys. Thinking about a basic level.
Actually, yes, we
Either
have three types.
if you talk about Azure AD, or again talking about RBACs only.
RBAC. Okay. Mhm.
You're talking about RBAC only, because that's what Azure AD really means out there.
So
But
for storage account, can we
the
give
other
access keys?
authentication can for storage account, can you give? Sorry, can you come again, please?
Access keys, the third option.
Yes, you can expose your access keys, provided you are sure that you want or someone who is accessing this particular storage account needs an admin access. Access keys is a possible option. Access keys is one of the possible options out here as such. You can expose your access keys out there as such. You can do that. So access keys or shared access signature or identity and access management out here or access control here. The question was that, you know what, I have access control here also and I have access control here also. Let's say a test container, and I'll say test container 1, create this out, and let's go ahead create something called test container 2, and also create this out here as such. So I have two containers called test container 1 and test container 2. Now there is something called what? Access control. Let's do one thing. Let's firstly go into Azure Active Directory, and under users I will create a user. Now that was your question on what is the difference between access control at a container level and at a storage account level. Let's look at that. Let's create a user. I'll say I'll create a user called container user. I'll say he's a container user. First name is something like container user. Password, I'll give a password here, and I'll say create this out. So I'm creating a user called what? Container user. Let's refresh the screen a couple of times, and I have what? A container user out here. I'll also create a new user called storage user. Okay, I'm creating two users out here right now. Let's create one. Instead of inviting, I'll do that. I'll say storage user. I'll say storage user. Create this out. So I have what? Two users called container user and what? A storage user. So this person here is called a container user. And I have one more person that I created called what? Storage user out here as such. I will give access to this particular container user at a container level. I'll give access to this particular storage user at what? A storage level. Let's check this out. Let's go to the storage account. Let's go into containers. Inside containers, I'll go into a container called what? Test container 1. I'll go into identity and access management inside the container. Now this is done under the container out here. I'll say add role assignment, and let me check for a storage role here. I don't want an owner, contributor or something. I just have something called as a storage account or a storage blob data contributor. Only one particular thing out here, just telling me that it will allow me to do read, write and delete access to the Azure storage blob containers and the data. The container and the data I am able to, let's say, go ahead and delete it out and so on and so forth. I'll say next. Yes, this is what I want. And I'll say select members, and I'll search for my container user. So select, review and assign this out. Done. Now this is the container user who's given access at what? Container level. I also have one more user called storage user. Let me go into my storage account. Agreed, this is the storage account here, under which you also have again access control. I'll go here. I'll say add role assignment, and I'll say something like, let's look for storage specific to storage. Okay, storage. As a storage account contributor, lets you manage including access keys and etc. Provides full access to the storage account data. This is what I have, and I'll say yes. Next, this is the user. I'll say select members. I'll now say storage user. This is the one. I'll select review and assign. Reviewed and assigned here. Done. Let's come back. How many resource groups that I do have? 2 resource groups. Earlier, for the earlier demo, I created some data RG. I have a couple of resources inside this for the earlier demo. I have a couple of things right now. So let's do this. I'll now log in to the Azure portal like the container user. Okay, I'm logging in like the container user. Now my question, what access that the container user has? What is the RBAC that we have given here?
Only one
You need
particular
to
container.
wait on the container
No,
and
what was the
the
RBAC we
log.
have given? Only that particular container, and the RBAC is called what? Storage
Contributor.
blob data
Storage
contributor.
contributor.
Storage blob data contributor out here. At what? Test container 1. This particular user is given what? Storage account contributor at what? Storage account 1, under which you have multiple containers. Now let's see what is the difference between that. As someone asked the question, let's go there. Firstly, let's go into the users. I'll get the user ID. Firstly, I don't remember the user ID. The container user, this is the user ID. So I'm copying this out. Again, since this is the first login, right, it'll ask me to change the password. I'll do that. Password. Very first time login, it's asking me to change the password. I'll do that. Just skip for now, and I'll log into the Azure portal. My question is that this is the hierarchy that I have right now. I have a tenant. I have a subscription. Under this particular subscription, as of now, I have what? 2 resource groups. 2 different resource groups under this particular subscription out here. RG1 and RG2. I don't know why this got copied. Let's see. I have a resource group called RG1 and RG2 out here. Under the RG2 or under something called as a storage RG, I have a storage account and I have 2 different containers under the storage account called test container 1 and test container 2. Test container 1, container 2. So this is the hierarchy that I have. Now I have a container user who's added where? Where did we add this particular container user at?
The container.
Where did we add him? Where did we add the container user?
Container.
Did we add the
level.
RBAC, sir.
container level? Under container level out here, which means that this user is here under this particular container called test container 1. My question, will he be able to see the subscription?
No,
Will
sir.
he be able to see the resource group?
No,
Will he
sir.
be able
No.
to see the storage account? Will he be able to
No.
see a container?
Yes.
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 No.
That one particular container.
Yes. Which means if he has to see the container, he has to see the storage account also, because without a storage account, you cannot see a container, which means he has to also see the resource group. Without resource group, you cannot see a storage account out there, which means he has to see what? Subscription also. Let's see that. I am the user. I'll say maybe later. Let's say resource groups. So next, again, it'll take time to, let's say gain this access out here. Let's look at this one. Let's refresh the screen a couple of times. Let's escape for now. Say no. Okay. Let's see subscription, apply this out, and location, apply this out. This is fine. Will take some time for this one to, let's say show up. Let's look at this also. Resource group, storage account. I have a container, and under this particular container, let's see what this user does have. Okay, where is the user role that I've given? Let's see. Yes, there's someone called as let's say someone called as container user, who's a user and has something known as storage blob data contributor, and it's taking somewhat a little bit of time to, let's say, go ahead and get the access reflected. As of now, I do not have a resource group. Let's see my subscription. I am able to see the subscription, good enough. I should be able to, again, unauthorized. I do not have the complete access over the subscription. There's no complete access of that. Let's look at the resource groups, and for some strange reason the resource groups not getting reflected. I think I should wait for some time to kind of get showed this one. Let's try this out. Let's try to re-log in and try to see this. And let's see if I can re-log in here as that particular container user. Let's see what I get here. Okay, still no access. Let's see. Let's come via a storage explorer in that way then. Let's try to access this over a storage explorer. It should show me a resource group because I don't have a storage account. Let's see. So no storage accounts to display, which means that the access is not, let's say, kind of coming right now. I need to, let's say, wait for some time for the access to propagate. Let's try to, let's say, hit the subscription, and I'll say Azure. I'll say next. Let's try to check this out. So I am logged in as this particular user inside my Azure Storage Explorer out here, and it's now telling that, okay, fine, this is what it is, and etc. Now let's see. I have a subscription, and if I go into my storage accounts again, it's taking some time to get my access out there. So it's telling container user and all that stuff. But the idea here, again, it will take some 5 or 10 minutes of time to get the access out there properly. Right now, it's not propagating this out right now. So the idea here is that this user who's added at a container level will only and only have access to just the test container. Meaning, if I log in like this particular user, and if I take some time to look at, let's say, the access out there, I should be able sorry, I should be able to see that particular storage account. At the same time, I should only have the access called storage blob data reader out, storage blob data owner out here, which means that I should only have access on this one. Let me do one thing also. I probably think that it's not
No, this
able
is
to
for
drill down the read
container
access.
user, right? I mean, this is for container user.
This is for container user. Yes.
Yeah, but he will not be able to see the storage account details, right? Should be, or he should
You
not
should
be.
be able to see the storage account details. If the user has the access to the containers, he should have a read access over the storage account as well. He should have a
And
read access at the storage
all
account
up
as
to
well as
tenant level. All up to tenant level.
all up to tenant level. Yes. Again, if you see, I did not give any access, but the user is still able to go ahead and see the subscription. It is able to propagate the subscription access, but it's taking some unusual time to, let's say, go ahead and give me
Yeah,
the
can you
storage
check
access out
the
there.
storage account? I mean, storage account, whether user has the access to it.
It will take some time. It will take some time for the access to come in. That's what I was telling you. That it will take some time for the access to come in out here. The access is still getting propagated. So it'll take some time for the access to come in, and he will have access on the
So
storage account. He'll have a read
he'll
access on
have
the storage account.
only read access. Okay.
Yes, he'll have only a read access on the storage account. But on the container called test container 1, that's where the user will actually have the access out here as such. This is where the user is actually added out here as such. Called a test container 1 out here as such as a storage blob data contributor. So if I were to give this access, let's see, I'll just go ahead and explicitly give a read access out here to see whether I'm able to drill it down. Let's look at that. See reader, I'll say next. I'll say container user, I'll say okay, select. Some reason it's taking a lot of time for the access to get propagated. So I'm directly adding the user as a reader on the resource group. So he shouldn't ideally require a reader access as such, but let's see how it works out here. So this user is becoming a reader here at the storage account level, and this user is also a storage blob data contributor at a container level called container 1 out here as such. So let's look at that, and let's come back here. Shouldn't ideally be the case, but let's see. Again, it is taking somewhat unusual time to drill down the access out there. So we'll wait for some time and we'll look at it. But theoretically, this is what should happen. The user who's added at the storage account out here, you all can try this out. The user who's added at the storage account should have access to the storage account and both the containers under the storage account. The access will propagate downwards. So to answer to a question, the difference between IAM at a container level versus IAM at a storage level is this. If you give it at a container, if this particular user logins, he will only be able to see and access this particular container out here. But if this user logins, he'll be able to access both the containers out here as such. That's the primary difference. Again, it's taking some time for the access to drill down. So that's the reason I'm not able to, let's say, really give you a demo. So finally I have some access. It's telling no access out here. So it will take some time for the access to come into picture. Usually it has to propagate over all the domain controllers that this particular tenant is hosted on. That's the reason it will take some time for the access to, let's say, normally come in. Usually when we add a new user, we give an ETA telling that, you know what, you'll at least have to wait for about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours for your access completely to, let's say, propagate, and then for you to access it out here and so on and so forth. But since we are doing, small demos out there, it won't really take so much of time. So if you come back after, 10 minutes or something like that, you should be able to see the container inside that particular storage account out there as such.
So this is normal in a production environment as well.
Yes, even in production environment, it's normal. You will have to wait if your user is added, you will have to wait for that. You'll have to wait for that particular role to get propagated across your domain controllers. Yes. Any more questions here?
I mean, is it because we are doing over the portal or through CLI? If we do it, I mean, will it be faster or it is same?
Sir, anyways you do it, it'll still take the same time. This is a platform managed Active Directory. You do not have an ETA for this one. So the maximum ETA that they tell is around 3 to 4 hours out there. So it's a platform managed. You take a CLI, you're doing the same REST API call. You're coming from a CLI, you're coming from the portal, you're talking to the same REST API in the backend. So it is the same time basically that it takes.
Mhm.
Hi
Yes.
Kiran, one question actually.
Please.
See, user is getting the access at the time of we are creating the user at the tenant level, or separately we are giving the uh, storage and container access.
No, user will not get the access when you're creating him at the tenant level. Creating him at the tenant level will only give him access to the Azure AD tenant. That's it. he will not have access
Okay.
to your subscriptions. So if you want the user to have access to your storage account or to the container, you will have to do an IAM at that particular level out there as such.
We need to give it separately.
Yes. Let's check this out. No access still. Need to wait for some time. Let's check this out. Yes. I will come back here and see. I'll have to log out, log in, do a couple of things out there as such. So let's check this out in a couple of minutes. So I apparently have access to that particular storage account, but again, as a container user, I only have a read access here. I don't have, let's say, a complete access out here as such. I am just a reader who's coming from this one, which means that if I try to go into the access keys and all these things out, my authorization will fail. I'm a reader. I don't have a complete access on this particular storage account out here as such. Wherein, if I come down to the containers, since I have given myself a read access here in the container 2, again it says you do not have permission, you do not have authorization level and all that stuff, because I don't have anything, or I do not have any access that I can do out here. So I cannot upload something. Now if I try to upload something, it will fail. If I say I upload something out here, fine, let's put a different file here, it will fail. It will fail simply telling that, you know what, you do not have the access out here. Reason being, this is what? Test container 2. And on test container 2, what kind of an access do you think that this particular user will have? Reader. Exactly. Called as what? Reader, coming from what? The resource group out here. But however, on the test container 1, have what? A storage blob data contributor, which is overriding the reader permission out here. You ideally shouldn't have the reader in place, but since I just went ahead and added this out, it's giving me a reader as well. And if I now go ahead, upload the data, it will work. The reason it will work is because I am a storage blob data contributor at the test container 1 level, and I've logged in as what? The container user out here as such. This is going to
Can
be
you remove
different.
remove the reader access to at the resource group level?
I'll remove the reader access to the resource group level. I am a little skeptical that I'll lose the access out here. Let's see that. Ideally shouldn't, but I'm a little skeptical that I'll lose this particular access out here as such. So this is reader access out here. If I remove this out again, it'll take some time for the access to propagate. It took around like about 15 minutes for the access to propagate out here. So even if I do that, you still won't observe the difference out here as such. You'll still see the same thing out there as such. It'll take some time for the access to propagate out here. So the reader is no longer there as such. But you shouldn't need a reader is what my understanding is. But I can look at the documentation and clarify on that one. You shouldn't need a reader. You can directly have a direct access onto the containers, and you should be able to access the container out here. It's just the time
So,
which it is just taking out here as such. Yes, please go ahead, please.
Kiran, I mean, this is because it has to connect with Azure AD and then propagate the access controls.
It is not that it has to connect to the Azure AD. Azure AD is nothing but a virtual machine that is running in the background, not one single virtual machine, but a set of virtual machines wherein your tenant is hosted. This access should propagate to all the virtual machines that are running in the background, which is hosting your tenant. Access propagation. So that's the reason it will take some time. So you understand the concept of a domain controller, right?
Yeah.
Your tenant is not hosted just on one, let's say, controller. Your tenant is hosted on multiple domain controllers out here, and each and every domain controller needs to have this access propagated out here as such.
And we don't know how many domain controllers, right?
That's not in our control. It's a platform
Okay.
managed service. So it's an Active Directory that is hosted on Azure. So it is managed by the platform. So that's the reason we do not have a say, or we do not have a control on how much time it really takes out there as such.
Hello.
Go ahead, please.
Kiran, I have one question actually.
Go ahead. Just a
So
second.
if the user is
Okay, just a second. I think Trinath had a question. I'll take first his question and then come back to you. Is that okay?
yeah, no problem.
Trinath, yes, you had a question. Sorry, please go ahead.
Sir, sir, in this scenario, I am creating one user, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I am directory permission of IAM is the storage account contributor.
Okay.
So he has no permission on resource group and hello, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead, please. I'm listening to your question.
You don't access on resource groups, sir.
Yes, again, in that case, I shouldn't even access. I have an access to the subscription, but I do, right? I have some limited access over the subscription out here. Reason being, if you need to look at the container, you need to have some kind of an access over your storage account, and you need to have some kind of an access over your resource group, and that's the reason the access is propagating that way. Okay, fine. Now see the okay. So I think you need a reader access as well. You need some kind of a read access on your resource group as well out there. That's the reason it's not really working. So yes, I stand corrected there. I think you need some kind of a reader access on your storage account as well, in order to gain that particular access on your container too. And that's the reason right now I lost the access right now, as in when the access propagated. That's the reason I'm not able to see it. So yes, you need a read access on your, let's say, resource group, and that read access will propagate all the way to your storage account, and then you will be able to, let's say, go ahead and see your containers and so on and so forth. In this case, I'm not able to see my containers. I'm not able to see my resource groups out there. So it's not allowing me to directly, let's say, let's say, talk to my container directly. So you need at least a read access on your storage account out here as such.
But
For some
ideally,
reason,
if there is no access, I mean, it should display that a message saying that we don't have any access or access denied or something like that, right?
and it is not displaying anything, right? It's not really
Yeah, I
displaying
mean,
anything out there.
no,
It will
which
it
means
will not
ideally
display
there is no
anything.
access.
Which means
Ideally,
ideally there's no access.
yeah,
Yes,
access
which means ideally
denied.
there's no access. It will not tell you access denied. Why will it tell you access denied? You already have access on your subscription. You have an access
Yeah,
on your subscription, right?
but
So it
the
will not tell you an
one
access
level
denied.
down is the resource groups.
One level down is the resource group. You do not even have a read access on your resource group, so it's not showing you anything.
That's where I mean,
But when you
subscription
come to
we
the
have an
storage
access,
explorer,
but yeah,
yes, one down level you do not have an access, but you all the way have an access at, let's say, the container.
container. Yeah,
But
container
that doesn't
understand.
seem to be working. Yes, that doesn't seem to be working. You will probably have to have at least a read access out here as such.
The container level also, container user doesn't have access. It should have, right? I think as a blob data contributor.
As a blob data contributor, I do have access, but the issue here is
Yeah.
that I don't have even a read access on my, let's say, sorry, I don't even have a read access on my resource group. That's the reason it's not able to show me my resource group. Since it's not able to show me my resource group, it's failing to show my container as well. So it turns out that you need at least a reader access on your resource group out here as such.
Oh, right now you are logged in as an admin, right? Owner.
Yeah, this is my owner account. But if I log
Okay.
in, let's say, as this particular container user, it looks like I need at least a read access out here as such. With a read access, I was able to read that particular container. I was able to perform the operations out there. So you need multiple accesses out there in order to access this out. When you come, especially to a child resource out there as such. Again, I'll also try to log in as the storage user. So I have created another user called storage user. Remember, that user
Yeah.
has a direct access onto the storage account. Let's see how that behaves. I don't have a read access on my, let's say, on the resource group, but looks like I would need a read access on the resource group as well. Let's check this out.
But what permissions we have on the subscription level or container user?
On the subscription level as this particular user,
Container, yeah, container user, yes.
I don't have really any access out here. It's just a read. If I look at access control and look at the access out here, there's no access that I have.
But still
It's just
you
a
are
read
able
that
to
I'm
see it.
getting. It's still able to see it because I am added into the tenant. I'm added into the subscription indirectly. So since I'm added into the subscription indirectly, the access is getting propagated. But since I have
Yeah,
no access on the resource group whatsoever, I
right.
don't have a read
That
access
is
on
where
it.
so from
Mhm.
subscription the access levels are not propagating down, right? They are not inherited.
Because I have not added myself onto the subscription at all. How will it even propagate? I
It
have
is
not
showing
added
the
myself onto.
subscription.
It's
Whatever
showing the
permissions.
subscription. It will show the subscription. It will show the subscription, but I don't have a permission onto the subscription. So if you look at this, I don't have any permission onto the subscription. If I were added myself onto the subscription as a read access out here, that would have
Then it will
propagated to the
propagate.
resource group. Yes,
Okay.
that would have propagated to the resource groups as well. But I am not even added onto the subscription out here.
But
So it's telling, okay,
my
fine, I'll
doubt
let
is,
you go.
my
Go on, please.
confusion is there is nothing added to the subscription, but still we are able to view. I mean,
No, you
container
cannot
user
say
is
that there
able
is
to view.
nothing. No, you cannot say that there is nothing added to the subscription. There is something added to the subscription. That is that your subscription is able to identify that you are a storage blob contributor or a storage container contributor out here, right? So if you go into the if you go into the users out here and go into something known as a container user and go into something called Azure role assignments, I have a role assignment, and the subscription is able to identify that you have a role assignment out here, and that's the reason it's exposing itself. But the resource group doesn't. Reason being, the access is propagating from this level. It's telling, you know
Oh,
what, you are a contributor at a storage account, and under the storage account you're a contributor at the container
container.
level out here, but you don't have a resource group out here. That's the issue. You don't have a resource group out here. But let's check this out. Let's see the other user called a storage user, and if I go into something called Azure role assignments, and he has a direct access onto this particular storage account. So let's try, let's say, logging into that, let's say logging in with, let's say, this particular ID, and see what this particular guy is. Again, to answer to your question, the container user is able to see the subscription. Reason being the Azure AD is able to identify that you have some kind of a role based access control on the subscription level, but not at the resource group level. And if you're not able to see the resource group, it's telling that, you know what, since you're not able to see the resource group, I won't even show you the storage account, neither the container. But yes, I will show you the subscription still. Reason being, the tenant is telling that, you know what, you have some kind of an access, but again, I have a very limited access out here. I cannot see the billing, I cannot see all these things out. I'm just able to see the blades of my subscription, but I'm not able to see anything apart from that. I'll be able to see minimal things like, let's say, the subscription ID and so on and so forth. But apart from this, I won't be able to do anything out here as such. But let's see, if I log in as the storage user, let's see what kind of an access this particular, let's say, user has out here. Again, this
One
user
question,
is
Kiran.
directly added onto our hold
Yeah,
your
yeah.
question for a minute. Let's complete this and let's come back there. And let's try this out. And let's try to, let's say, escape this out for 14 days and let's try logging in. Now, if you see, I have an access. I did not give myself a resource group access at all. But again, if I'm able to look at my storage account, it means that I have some kind of an access on my resource group as well. So no access on the resource group. Still, I have access to my storage account. Reason being, I'm directly added onto the storage account as what? A storage blob contributor out here.
No, this makes sense because it is showing at the resource group, it is saying no access.
No
But for
access,
container
exactly.
user, yeah, container user, it is not displaying anything, saying, I mean, it
It's
doesn't
not
show no
displaying
access.
anything. Yes, reason being, probably it's not able to identify the access directly at a child level. It's not able to take the access directly out here as such.
So let's
Probably
say
you will
if
have
we
to at
give,
least give it a.
yeah, let's say if you give permissions at the subscription level, for example, read
Okay.
for the container user, then the role
Okay.
permissions will propagate down
Yes, the role permissions
for
will
container
propagate
user.
down for the container user directly from your subscription layer. So if you are adding this particular user as a reader here, it will directly propagate down. He'll be a reader here. He'll be a reader here.
Yeah,
He'll be a reader
but
at test
here,
container 2, but he
yeah,
won't be a
one it is,
reader at test container 1. He
yeah,
will
yeah,
have a storage blob
contributor.
data contributor as a
Yeah, okay.
contributor access out here. But this user, who's a storage user, right? He doesn't have any access whatsoever onto the resource group, but he has access onto the storage account. The container user did not even have an access on the storage account. That's the reason he's not able to see the container as well. And he's not able to see this one. Again, if you see like this user, if I go into the resource group, I'm still not able to see any resource groups, but I'm able to see my storage accounts. I'm able to still see my storage accounts. Reason being, Azure AD is able to identify that you have some kind of an access on the storage account. So I'll let you do this. I'll let you go ahead and handle your containers. I'm not getting any error here, right? If I just go ahead and say upload this out, let's try to do it on a test container 2. Again, on a test container 2 as well, I'll have the same access called what? Storage blob or storage account contributor coming from what? Parent resource inherited. So if
Correct.
you are giving directly access onto the child resource, that becomes an issue. It won't, let's say, really show. So you need some kind of an access on your parent, like at least a read. In my case, the container user at least needs to have a read access on the parent resource so that the child resource can be displayed. So now if you look at this one, if I just go ahead into this particular container, I'll upload, let's say, some kind of a file. It will still allow me to do that. Reason being, I am a contributor at this level. It will
On
still
both
allow
the
me to go
containers.
ahead on both the containers. Reason being, the access that I have is coming from the storage account, not the containers. So if you look at the access control here, if I say view the access, my access is a storage account contributor coming from parent resource
Yeah,
inherited. I'm
correct.
inheriting this
No, no.
access from the storage account level. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that is understood because we are giving at the parent, it is propagating to the child. But
Yes.
when we give to the child, so it is reverse propagation doesn't happen anyway.
Doesn't happen.
So
Yeah. Reverse propagation to the parent is not happening.
yeah, but only weird thing is, I mean, maybe it is a bug, I think. It should show no access to the resource group or at the storage level.
It is
But
showing no
storage
access to this.
storage account, it
Yes.
is clear. I mean, it is showing no access to the resource group.
Yes.
That
And
makes sense.
at
But
no,
the
this also
container
makes
is
sense actually. Well, this container user also kind of makes sense because if I log in as inside the container user, Azure AD is able to identify that I have some kind of an access out there. And
yeah,
Azure
for
AD,
the
since I have some kind of
subscription.
an access, it's showing me the subscription. But under this particular subscription, it should have showed me a container. But since I do not have a read access onto my storage account, it's not showing me a storage account. And it's not even showing me the resource group. Same thing which is happening to the storage user as well. The storage user, on the other hand, has only one simple thing out here. Different is that this
No
is that as a
access.
storage user, yes, he has no
Yeah,
access, and
that
it
is
is
not.
showing him explicitly that he has no access out there. Reason being, I have access directly onto the storage account. So if I go into this particular storage account out here, I'm able to see the name of the resource group in which it's hosted in. If I click on this, it's telling you know what, you have no access out here.
Yeah,
If I directly go to the
this
resource
should be the
groups,
ideal scenario, right, for container user also.
this should be the ideal scenario for the container user also, provided he was able to see the resource, provided he was able to see the storage account. Since he's not able to see the storage account, he's not even able to see the resource group out there. So if, for example, I am as an admin user, I go ahead, add the container user at the storage out, at the storage account level out here. Let's say I give him a storage access called read, called as a reader. And I add the container user here at the storage account level. Now he'll be acting as, let's say, he'll be able to see the storage account. But if you click on the resource group, it will simply say you have no access. Since the access level is currently inherited or currently, let's say, given at the child level, he's not able to see the child because he's not able to see the parent. That's the issue with the content. That's the issue with the container user. So if I now
He
go
will
back
be
as a
able to see
container
the
user,
containers, right? I think.
he won't be able to see the containers if you don't have any access on the storage account, right? That's the
No,
issue
no,
that we were facing.
you are adding user at the storage account level as a read
Yes.
access. Then he should
Yes.
be able to see the containers, isn't
He
it?
should be able
That
to see
is
the
the child,
containers, and he will be able to see the containers. So again,
yeah, but not
propagation
the
takes
resource
time.
group.
So not the resource group exactly. he won't be able to see the resource group. It will simply give it an error telling that no access or no authorization and so on and so forth. So again,
Correct,
it will take
correct.
some time
Yeah,
for this one to propagate.
yeah,
Yes.
that is clear. At the storage account level, it is clear,
Yes.
but at the container user level, I mean, it is something different.
Yes, this is the container user again. See, this is the container user that I do have. And this particular container user has a role, and this role is being propagated as we speak. And this particular container user has this particular role out here. So if I go into the users, I'll go into the container user right now. And if I look at the Azure role assignments, this is what I have. As a container user, I can read my, let's say, storage account. And I also have a storage blob data contributor access onto one particular child resource called as a test container one. So I'll
But
be a reader. I should be able to
this
read
user
it.
can see the storage account now because it is a read permissions are
Exactly.
propagated.
Exactly. Read permissions once propagated, this user should be able to see the storage account, and this user is able to see the storage account right now. Container user able to see the storage account, but if I click on the resource group, no access.
It is read only. Oh,
Read
resource
only.
group, yes.
So for resource group, there is no access at all. There's not even a read only access. If I click on this one, there's not even a read only access out here.
But storage
if I
account,
go
if you
inside,
click, I mean, it will display that, right? I mean, it is a
yes, it will
read only.
display, but again, it will display, and I have a limited access again. Meaning,
Correct, read only.
I
Right.
cannot just go ahead and say, you know what, I want to generate a shared access signature. This option itself is grayed out. I'm a reader. Access keys.
But for
Authorization
container
field.
one, I mean, he should be able to, I think.
Container one, he should be able to. Reason being, this user
He's
also
a
has an
contributor.
authorization on container one. Yes. So if you look at this, he has two roles on the container one: storage blob, data contributor, and reader. That's the reason. If I go inside this particular container, upload something out here, it will not throw an error here. So if I say sample 4, I'll do this, I'll upload this, it'll still work.
Shared access
file.
also it should work, right? For container
Shared
one.
access also, yes, shared access also should work. And yes, again, it's saying you do not have, let's say, okay, user grant is not fine. That's not a problem. Shared access will work because I'm giving an access to this particular specific container. But if I go to container 2, this is something that I
It will
cannot
not.
do.
Yeah, it is only read only.
Again, it's giving me this one, it is completely disabled out here. And if I look into, let's say, upload and all that stuff, it will not still work out here as such. Reason being, my access here is just a reader access out here that is coming from a parent resource. It's just a reader access out here as such. Yes, any more
Kiran,
questions?
can I ask a question?
Israel, go ahead, please. I stopped you
Yeah,
earlier. Please go ahead.
no problem. See, if a user is getting access from the storage level, so would he be getting that containers access as well, right?
Yes, you will be getting the containers access as well.
Okay. So in that case, the containers owners will be different, or like it will be the same owners we are getting like.
Very importantly, firstly, when you say that a user is getting access from the storage account level, we'll have to understand what kind of an access does this particular user has on the storage account level. If this user has just a
Okay.
reader access, he will be a reader here, he will be a reader here also.
Okay.
He's not an owner. The access is being propagated from the parent level. In the access is coming from the parent level out here. But if you wish to override this, you want to only give the user an owner access on this particular container, you can
Okay.
add an IAM at the owner role. Yes, you can give an SAS alternatively, but if you want to, you don't want to expose your secrets, you can add an owner role going directly at the container level, add him at the owner. So what this user will do right now is that this user will still be able to read it, still be able to read this, but he will be an owner at the test container level 1, which means that he'll be able to upload the blobs.
Okay. So
Test container.
I'm asking like see that user is getting read access at the storage level. So he'll be getting read access on all the containers, right? So is it like
Exactly. He'll be having a read access on all the containers under this particular storage account.
so if you want to give only that particular user for only one container
Mhm.
like only access, not to the all the. So it is not like a secured purpose, right? Like if he's getting all the
Uh,
read access in
mhm,
all the containers,
mhm,
it's not a secured purpose,
mhm.
right?
Again, if he's getting a read access, the issue here is that he won't even be able to log. I mean, he won't even able to be, even to able to see the container. For example, if I just refresh this up, I'll be, let's say going ahead and opening this out, and this is like a container user. I'm coming and I'm approaching here. So I am able to see this particular container. I'm able to list the data in this particular container, and I am able to see the data. And if you see this, right, the
Hmm.
request is not authorized to perform, etc. I'm not even able to read the data. I'm not even able to read the data because I do not have a list access here. I do not have, let's say, a list access out here as such. So even though you give
Okay.
him a reader, that particular user is still not able to do this. If I come into the container 2, right, this is the error that I'm getting. Not authorized to perform and so on and so forth. The
A
same thing
reader
that
is
will
just
happen.
to view the container, that's all, not the data inside.
Just to view the
Acha.
container,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Just to view the
That's what
container.
I'm asking. Like, that's what I'm asking. Like
Yes.
he'll be accessing
Mhm.
data to read, or he'll be
Uh,
No, no,
accessing
no.
only that container.
To
he'll be
access the
only
data, you
accessing
need
the
to
container.
list actually.
Yes, that's
To list
correct.
the
To
container.
access the data, he needs to list. That's correct.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. Got it.
Yes. Any more questions here, guys? Again, see, roles are super vast. There are like a lot of roles that are there in Azure. In order to understand this, the best way is to create a user, try it out, log in like the user, and understand how the permissions are getting propagated, and then read the documentation accordingly. That will be the best help that we can normally get out here. But to address this question, I had to take that particular hour. Reason being, this topic needs that particular attention on how the access really goes out here as such. Again, I had this topic covered for a later point in time, but I'll just take it at this point and I'll cover later topic out there as such. But does
Kiran,
it
one
answer your
question.
question on how the access is actually? Yes, go ahead, please.
No, the group policies which are there in Active Directory, right, in Azure AD as well. So
Mm-hmm.
those will also get
Mm-hmm.
propagated. Can we manage group policies from AD to all the IAM
Yes,
users? We can do that.
yes, you
Okay.
can. Yes, you can do that. You can do a group policy to all the IAM users out here. Best way to do it is that when you're creating a user, add the user to a group instead of, let's say, adding the
Yeah.
user just in the AD. Add them into a group so that group policies
And
can together be
you also,
managed.
right? I mean, then,
Mhm.
yeah. And the organization unit.
Correct. Yes. Any more questions, guys?
I think Azure AD is almost more or less similar to on-prem AD, right? It is just as
On-prem AD, but again, on-prem AD will give you more control. Azure AD will not give you, let's say, a full control over, let's say, the backend running machines out here. Because an on-prem AD, right, if something goes wrong, you'll be able to see what happened to the machine out there, or what happened to the
yeah.
on-premise server on which the AD is
No,
hosted.
I was
Because
asking
yes,
about the functionality. Functional
the
the Active Directory
functionality,
itself.
yes, is more or less the
Same.
same. Functionality is more or less the same out here as such.
So the replication, everything, I mean, taken care by Azure because it is a managed
Yes,
service.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, any more questions, guys? I have 1 more minute. I can take one more question out here before we close the session.
So can we also, are we also seeing through CLI or PowerShell later point in time? How
Yes,
the user
definitely.
management?
I have, yes. I have one more session for the theoretical part. Like tomorrow, I'll take lifecycle management. And I'll close my lifecycle management tomorrow, and we'll move into PowerShell. So in
Lifecycle
PowerShell, I'll show
management
you
for the blob,
storage account.
for the,
Yes,
okay,
for the blob
storage.
storage
Okay.
accounts and etc.
All right.
So once we do that, we'll move into PowerShell, and we'll also look at CLIs out there.
Sure.
Okay, guys, thank you, and that's it from mine. Have a good day ahead. We'll meet tomorrow and we'll discuss on this one. Thank you.